Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, what I like to talk about, how some Black lawmakers are going through the root to address their product safety. Within Representative Ayanna Pressley is going to address the issue. Also, President Biden has an executive order to help curb gun violence in America. And some Black leaders are saying exactly what the Black community needs. So I want to get this take on that. Later, we'll check in with Dr. Molina from the Black Lives Matter grassroots organization to give us some updates on some of the big campaigns they're working on. And later, we'll talk about Ciara's dress at the Oscars. Yeah, that little see-through piece. How some people are saying it was way too much. And even others are saying Russell Wilson should have stopped that from happening. We'll have the conversation. So stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Let's jump right in as we first talk about what's the latest around the situation about hair care product safety, how there is a greater conversation and a much larger movement against the hair care industry, product industry, especially because of certain products are being marketed to Black women that are being seen as dangerous to their health. Now, here's the thing. Remember, we had a conversation, and I had our doctor here, Dr. Bridget Williams, ND. She talked about this in her first segment on Reclaim Your Wellness, talking about the fact that a lot of these hair care products contain chemicals and other ingredients that cause cancer and other healthcare issues. And so now the conversation has gone from doctors to now political leaders, and representatives such as Ayanna Pressley and others are saying, you know what? We need the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, to take a look at this situation in a much thorough investigation. Take a look at this, folks. Here's the latest coming from the root around this issue. Representatives Ayanna Pressley, who is a Democrat out of Massachusetts, and Chantel Brown, who is a Democrat out of Ohio, they both have asked the Food and Drug Administration to review the safety of chemical straighteners. According to a letter that they have actually put out to the FDA, they said, quote, "We write to request the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, to conduct a thorough and transparent investigation to determine whether publicly available chemical hair straightening products contain carcinogens that lead to a higher risk of uterine cancer." Now, they also said that Black women use these products at a higher rate than others and could be disproportionately impacted. In order to protect public health, we urge the FDA to reevaluate the safety of these products. They also said in the same letter that as a result of anti-Black hair sentiment, Black women have been unfairly subjected to scrutiny and forced to navigate the extreme politicization of hair. Hence, generations of Black women have adapted by straightening hair in an attempt to achieve social and economic advancement. Manufacturers of chemical straighteners have gained enormous profits, but recent findings unveil potentially significant negative health consequences associated with these products. A very, very stern letter to the FDA to ask them to look into the situation around Black hair care product safety for Black women. Let me bring my sister in. Y'all can see her on her show called Suzette Speaks. She is the host of that beloved show, as well as she's the attorney out of Florida. And I want to get her take as well as your take on the whole conversation. Suzette, good to hear from you. How you feeling this afternoon? We got you, Suzette.
Hey, good afternoon, Farajii. Yes, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Suzette?
Fantastic. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you being here and joining the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Suzette, talk to us about this latest effort by Representative Ayanna Pressley and Shontel Brown around getting the FDA involved in this situation. Now, doctors such as our doctor here, Dr. Bridget Williams, and others are saying this is a problem. Now it's taken up to the FDA, which is a different level. What's talk from your vantage point? What do you see? And it seems like this conversation is way past due. Suzette, this seems to be, this has always been a conversation for at least past 10 to 15 years. But what do you think happened to get it to this point?
Can I just start by saying I agree to the nth degree with Farajii on how long it has taken for us to bring conversations like this to our government and to make Black women's lives a priority. I'm going to view this more so as a consumer, not as an attorney. Well, first, let me begin with my legal hat, because shout out to the attorneys who have started filing lawsuits. That's really why we see some momentum here. As Black women, we know that oftentimes our products that we use on our skin and our hair, thanks to social media, we've been able to kind of communicate more often than before that all of our products do not contain what are oftentimes really safe chemicals. And we have been kind of just, this has been swept under the rug for a long time without any major concern. So I'm grateful that we have Black women who are standing up on behalf of Black women to say no more. This would never fly if it were products, as it does not for products for mainstream America. But for some reason, if you look on the back of any hair oil, hair grease on the average, beauty counter that is geared towards Black women, you'll find all of these products that are used in petroleum manufacturing, that are used in all kinds of ways that are really not meant to be on hair and on skin. What we do know now, Farajii, is that Black women have a higher chance of getting uterine cancers. We have more frequent occurrences of uterine fibroids. And not to say that we could put this directly at the feet of these chemicals that are in relaxers, but it's high time that we started to do our research and had the federal government step up to the plate to protect our lives. So we're going to continue the conversation. If you have feedback, please put it in the chat right now. As Brother Farajii, I know we have him on. He'll be back on shortly. But if we do have any comments, please let us know how you're feeling. If you're watching live, drop in the chat where you're watching from, and we're going to have a conversation about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that point up, Suzette. The fact of the matter, which is that you got a lot of these Black women who are in Congress who are looking at this. And I mean, I can only imagine like the in terms of the impact of using these hair care products, a lot of times with Black faces, right? A lot of these products targeted to Black women have Black faces. And the assumption also is, Suzette, that these hair care companies are Black owned. Not knowing that these are marketing tools of using Black faces, Black children's faces, Black women's faces as a way to get, Black women to buy into these products. But it's, I mean, this is years. You're talking about years in the making. And if they bring this up in a big scheme of things from an FDA standpoint, I can only imagine the amount and the number of lawsuits that could potentially happen as a result of this, if they find that, yes, these products contain toxic carcinogens, toxic ingredients that cause cancer, uterine cancer, and other forms of illnesses to Black women. I mean, you're talking about $1 billion class action lawsuit. That's what I'm thinking here right now.
Absolutely. And I think we tend to not want to jump to conclusions that the government is willfully allowing for large companies to hurt consumers in this way, to sell products that are directly unsafe, have been found to have chemicals that cause cancer and many other type of ailments to consumers. But it's been happening. We know not too far in the past, we had the Johnson & Johnson lawsuit where we had many plaintiffs. Class action was filed on behalf of those who were using talcum powder, right? This was on our shelves. This was a Black woman's ritual to powder herself and make sure she was ready to be present in a public space. And we now know that it had been, there was a higher correlation to illnesses due to talc. So it's not unheard of that we see that the government is allowing for poisons to be sold to us. And again, if this was in mainstream products, many of which it would have already been kind of dealt with or disallowed or even banned. If you look at the standards in Europe, many of the products that we have and many of the chemicals that we're seeing that are allowed to be in these products are not allowed in the European Union and other places around the world. But for some reason, our government is slow to the punch and allowing it to be sold specifically to Black women who use these type of products more than anyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want us to continue the conversation. I want to hear from the crew. Crew, y'all to tell me what your take is around this issue. As Representatives Ayanna Pressley and Representative Chantel Brown, both Black women who are deciding to take on the hair care industry, asking for the Food and Drug Administration to look into this situation that these hair care products could contain cancerous ingredients, chemical ingredients that can cause some real harm to Black women. I want you to share your thoughts on this, and then we will take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to hear more from Suzette and, of course, from you. So stay with us. You're tuned into The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
You will not.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We've been talking about this latest effort to address the situation of cancerous products and ingredients in Black hair care products, as Representative Ayanna Pressley from the state of Massachusetts and Representative Shontel Brown are going to task with the hair care product industry, and more importantly, calling on the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, to intervene into doing a thorough investigation of what is inside of those jars and those bottles that are often marketed to Black women around hair care products. I got my sister Suzette Speaks, who is the host of the Suzette Speaks show on YouTube, as well as she is an attorney out of Florida, to give us her insight. And I want to hear from you. So many of you are checking in. I know a lot of sisters, and Suzette, I want to bring you back into the frame. I know that a lot of sisters, I'm looking at, I think it's McCole that made the point that she has been stopped using what they call, y'all been calling the creamy crack for 10 years, right? But this is not even just about the straighteners and the lie. I mean, this might be in products all on the shelf, right? Across the board.
100% Farajii. Shout out to you, McCall. I'm late to the party. I like a little smooth look. You know what I'm saying? I like my hair to look smooth. You see me popping the braids today, but that's because I'm on a journey, and it's been a movement, guys. Nothing is new under the sun. We've seen sisters from, generations going by. I'm thinking like the 70s and the all natural movement. And thankfully, we've had a resurgence where I have little cousins who have never permed their hair. And I think about the freedom it gives them. And I think about the self-love and affirmation they receive to know that their hair is beautiful in its natural state. Black women are the only people that the way our hair grows, and our Black brothers, of course, too, but the way our hair grows out of our head is policed in a fashion that keeps us from, living in our authentic truth. We think about economics the way we style our hair. We think about whether we're going to get the job offer. We think about how people perceive us as, making almost a political statement. No other race has to deal with this, especially here in the American context. We are prejudged oftentimes by what our hair looks like and why it's not, or how far it is from the European standard. So we know for generations, lye was in hair straighteners. We know that people had all kinds of complications. Again, scientifically, we are going to do the research, and shout out to all the attorneys now picking up these lawsuits, Ben Crump being one of them, and others, to make this a position that maybe forces the hand now. Like, you are not going to do it on your own. The FDA has not required you to do this. You are allowed to put darn near anything in a Black woman's hair care product. That is unheard of. What is the FDA doing? So for these representatives to come forward, shout out to Mrs. Cohen, or Representative Cohen, as well as Ayanna Pressley, Delegate Stacey Plaskett, Cori Bush, all of those women who are standing up for those of us who know better. But again, it's in the marketplace, as if it's on the consumer to avoid what are potentially dangerous and damaging chemicals, instead of putting the onus on the companies and the manufacturers to not put them in there in the first place. So again, this conversation is much overdue, and I'm grateful that we're having it.
And I'm so happy that you just brought up that point, Suzette. The fact is that a lot of these products that we have known, for some of us, I'm not going to say everybody, this brings it to a more mainstream level, but for years, some of us have known that these products didn't work, either because of personal experiences, right, where the roots have been, damaged, or it's just because of those of us who might work in the healthcare field. But the fact is, I'm concerned that this is going to be talked about, and that money is going to be thrown at the problem. I mean, if you want to, if the conversation is going to be about money, because when you talk about Ben Crump, when you talk about other folks bringing them into the conversation, they're talking about some form of compensation, right? There's got to be one particular case, and I'm sure there is, Suzette. There's going to be one particular case that's going to be strong enough to kind of kick off the lawsuit, right? And when you're talking about compensation and how much money, you're talking about billions of dollars. We always talk about it, when the buying power of Black America, which is around the last numbers that I've seen, and tell me, you can correct me if you've seen something higher, around $1.3 trillion. That's the buying power of us as Black people. And a lot of it, we know it, we talked about it, a lot of it go to hair care, grooming products, beauty supplies, from wigs to makeup to hair care products for women. Same things in some cases for men. I mean, we put a lot of money into this industry. We have some people go as far as to say that we built the industry, right? So I'm concerned that it's going to be a money conversation rather than a conversation about creating products that are environmentally and human safe,
right?
Giving space to other black product lines, right? You know, when I think about something like, for example, Carol's Daughter, been around for 30 years. Now it's pretty popular now, but it took her a long time to get to the mainstream, to take that product base to the mainstream. So how do we avoid it from just being a money conversation? Because money is okay, we get it, but money is only going to be those who are outlined in the lawsuit. Culturally, there's so much more at stake than just money on the table.
Well, I agree with you fully, Farajii, that it has to be a multi-pronged approach. And that's why I'm really grateful for our congresswomen who are stepping forward, because you got to go from the inside and from the outside. And we could do stuff that is a more grassroots in as far as being the public outcry. So I think it has to be a combination. But let me tell you, when your pockets start hurting, they move, right? Again, there's so many parts of our economy that we allow for foolishness, pesticides, all kinds of things that are not to, for example, again, European standards, EU standards in other countries that are comparable to the United States. We let a lot of things fly that actually, my brother put it this way. He said, in America, it's not legal to to take someone's life immediately, but it's legal to do it slowly, which is really, really sad. And it's so true. We've talked about this. You cannot, go down the street and do anything crazy, but you can put things in products that the government knows has a higher correlation to things like tumors and brain cancer, all these kind of ailments that we see at a higher rate in Black women, and no one stops or no one in the government is creating a framework to keep people safe. So I think it's going to be, the congressional push. Thank you, Biden administration. While we have the ear of the FDA, because the president picks who's running that agency.
Yeah.
So democratically control kind of, so to speak, FDA. Thank you. We need to be moving this issue forward. We don't know what's going to happen in 2024, who's going to take power, who's going to take control. So I think it has to be multi-pronged. The way they're doing it is excellent. Put them on blast. Of course, we're going to need the lawsuits as well. And if we are who we say we are, in terms of what you just described, our economic power and prowess, if we stop buying it, then it's game over. But again, many people are ignorant to it.
Absolutely. Janelle, you checked in and said, look, every product is created with a safety data sheet. It's required by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration to communicate hazards to these factory workers. These hazards are known and in the fine print. Yeah, that's true. However,
they can still sell it to you. Read the small print. You're gonna.
Hey, look, hey, Suzette, how many of us actually read it?
Nobody. No, I do. I absolutely do. I mean, I go on social media
you're a lawyer,
look at
Suzette,
recommendations.
Of course, you read everything.
Yeah. I look at recommendations for safe products all the time. I see a lady post, these are all natural. Don't, use these. I will, for myself, go to the store and look for those all natural products. If there are things in there that I personally, not telling you to do this, do your research, but things I can't read, or products that I know have been shown to have a higher correlation with illnesses, I do not buy them. The more simple and straightforward and whole products that are in your hair oils and things like that is what we have to focus our for ourselves, because our government is not doing it.
Absolutely. Shalinda, you're doing something I think is pretty interesting. You said, I too have seen those unsafe products still being sold at 99-cent stores and have reported it to the BBB, the Better Business Bureau. They hate to see me coming.
Good for you, sis. Thank you. Because they think they slick. Let's sell it to the poor. Or people who are economically
no pun intended. No pun intended. They do think they slick.
Exactly.
But no, I'm glad that you do that. But guess what? Again, let's go back to the point. The point is that they're making it much more accessible and convenient, which is why if you are already in dire straits financially, or if you're in a set budget, whether you're in low income, middle income, or whatever the case may be, you have a budget. You're not going to spend $30 on an all natural bottle of hair care products, right? When you know that may not work for you. You might spend a little bit less. You might go to the major retailer, maybe a Target or a Walmart or something, but you might go to the dollar store. And I'm talking about for the women who are in whose income is not that high. That Target and Walmart are on the outskirts of a lot of cities. They're not inside of the cities. So what is inside of the city? 99-cent stores and convenience stores and stores that don't check quality control, stores that don't think about safety, and the stores that don't have the interests of Black women at the heart of their business practice. So
they're not forced to. Yes, I agree. 100%.
Absolutely. Look, we're going to keep our eyes on this, of course, folks. And more importantly, we're going to do our due diligence to keep you posted about this situation. But big shout out to Representative Ayanna Pressley, Representative Chantel Brown, and all of those who are involved in this effort. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk a little bit about President Biden and his attempt to curb gun violence as he's issued a major executive order. We'll have that conversation up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Let's now talk about what President Biden is doing to address the issue of curbing gun violence, folks. As you know, this issue has been a hot button topic. And did you know, according to the latest data coming from the gun archives, it said that there has been 100. I want y'all to listen to me to this real thing, because this is mind-blowing. There has already been 100 mass shootings in America, according to the Gun Violence Archive. 100 mass shootings in America. And guess what, folks? This is only mid-March. Yeah, this is the situation that we are faced with in this country. And so President Biden took the extraordinary measure of issuing an executive order to address this, to reduce gun violence, to reduce gun violence. And this is being seen by a lot of black leaders as being a major remedy to curb gun violence in the black neighborhood and black communities. Take a look at some of let me just share with you what is this executive order entails. Take a look at this here, folks. This executive order entails a couple of things. One is it includes measures to increase the number of background checks, to spread awareness and improve the use of red flag laws and address the loss and theft of firearms during shipping. Now, the executive order also seeks to hold gun manufacturers and sellers more accountable for their part in guns getting into the hands of bad actors, including the marketing of firearms to minors. President Biden said that, quote, when he was visited Monterey Park and here in California, he said, "I'm here today to act." He said these remarks where 11 people were killed and 9 others were injured in a January mass shooting at a ballroom. The president said his executive order is intended to accelerate and intensify this work to save more lives more quickly. Let me bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the conversation. Suzette, this right here, this is good. I will say this is a good start. Now, the question becomes, since the other side, the Republicans, is the side of preserving quote unquote gun rights in this country, right? How far do you think this will go in terms of what the president, this executive order, and then it trickling all the way down to the retail owners, the shop owners who sell the guns, trickle down to the states who have to enforce these laws? Like, how far do you think this is going to really get, Suzette?
Well, I'm grateful that President Biden is trying to do something. We have a Congress right now, because it is split, that is not likely to take up any very significant gun reform or any type of new regulations that will, in fact, help protect Americans from this increase and very, very tragic rise in gun violence. When I see this type of announcement that he made yesterday, I can see that his administration took a lot of time to try to find out where he, as the executive branch, can have an impact. Why? Again, Congress itself, because we have one house that is controlled by Republicans and one house, the Senate, is controlled by Democrats. It is not likely that there is going to be any consensus. And I think about, more background checks, yes. More red flag laws and strengthening those, yes, are going to be helpful. But unless we have the will, or the people are going to be much more vocal to those that they have elected to say, we will not stand for a do nothing. This is what we used to call it, the do nothing Congress, that attitude of, this is not politically expedient right now. We'll see it again on the news. We'll go to the vigils. We'll give the thoughts and prayers. We'll say how sorry we are. But until there is, I think, across middle America, I'm fed up. And therefore, if you guys don't do anything, we're going to vote you out. Unless that becomes a cry that we see, in a very consistent way. Because I see the young kids here from Parkland, they protest. They have rallies. I mean, there are, young people's movements around that. But it just doesn't seem like it's enough, because that gun lobby is so strong.
So that's the part about this, that the gun lobby is so strong. That's the concern that I'm having. But this is an executive order from a governmental standpoint. This is like a mandate. There is no question about it. There is no negotiation around it. This is a mandate that the president has put out. But something is telling me, Suzette, because of the partisan nature of politics nowadays, the president is not going to be listened to. Your father, it's like a parent in a household, right? They tell you to do something, and then the children get together and they're like, well, we'll do something else. Something is telling me that that's not going to happen. How do you?
Well, definitely there are going to be lawsuits. So that's how they stop the progress and kind of keep everybody in limbo until the lawsuits get resolved. It's kind of like the immigration lawsuits that are ongoing. Nothing is happening. No cases can be adjudicated until we get some type of judicial ruling, or what they call relief, right? Some higher or highest court issues an order, and then we're able to move forward. So I would not be surprised if there's a bunch of litigation that now comes to try to challenge these executive orders as unconstitutional and violation of the Second Amendment, et cetera, as they always are. But I think for the time being, I'm happy to see President Biden trying to make some headway, even when it's not in the news, when we don't have the latest tragedy. Of course, he picked a significant location yesterday to make this announcement, where there were, just innocent people in a dance hall, 20 of them mowed down. And it is a part of American culture. I'm not sure why we're not ready to really address with bipartisan legislation. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there are going to be challenges coming out the woodwork.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how Black organizations respond to this, and I think that's the other piece around this, right? That Black organizations are going to respond to this. Folks, I want to hear from the crew. I want to get your take on this. President Biden is issuing this executive order to address gun violence. What do you guys think around this issue? And I think we should get to the root of it, because along with all of these other measures, from red flag laws, Suzette, to check-in ID and all of these things, right? There's still a component of this process that's missing, which is you got to address the violent nature of the culture in this country. And we're just not addressing it. I feel like we're like dancing around it. We're thinking, and it's funny because it seems like guns have a mind of their own, right? Like people people say, well, guns don't kill, people kill. That's the thing. That people use the tools. Gun is a tool. It's a piece of metal, has no mind of its own. But the way these conversations go and the way the pieces of legislation go, it makes it seem as if guns have a mind of their own. And it takes out the fact that you do have the biggest part of gun safety at the heart of the matter, which is the human factor. Why do human beings go to the gun to address problems? We live in a violent culture right now.
Yeah, I think, this saying, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Like it is a cop-out of sorts, because again, we know that guns are sold or marketed, and this executive order also deals with marketing to young people. They're marketed, via our culture, via our movies, via, the daily news that we watch each and every day. If you watch the local news in the city or town where you're from. So I think there is, the mental health piece that also needs to be addressed, some of which comes in the form of a red flag-ish law, whether it's for, a criminal history red flag or some kind of mental health red flag. I just think we're going to have to maybe try it through the state legislatures around the country if we cannot get any movement from a national level. But I don't think people see it, I guess, as holistically as they should, right? It's not just the weapon itself, it's the sale of it and to whom. It's the background of the person. But I do agree with you, the root of a lot of the violence is the mentality of the person holding it. So I'm not sure how we can legislate that or better address that through maybe Biden's office and the executive order process. But yeah, it seems as if it's kind of like we dance around that. I agree with you on that point.
Absolutely. Lori checked in very quickly before we take our next pause. Lori, you said, has anyone heard from the Republicans on Capitol Hill about this issue when the president signed an executive order on this issue? I haven't heard anything. I haven't read anything, Suzette. What about you?
No, when I looked and did some research before our show today, I was seeing more positive coverage of it. And again, maybe the sources I read are ones that are more in favor of this administration.
Read liberal sources, Suzette.
Listen, that's what they're going to say.
Liberal sources.
But yeah, I haven't really seen any Republican response that I've read.
Okay. So as far as we know, and I'm sure the Republic, like you must be. You know what? We know that. How are you going to spend this? There's what's the spin on it? Other than say, well, the president shouldn't be going after the Second Amendment. And I think that conversation is almost a very weak conversation. And unfortunately, it puts that Second Amendment. It puts the Second Amendment in a compromising position, because now, if you keep using that as the argument, then people are going to start hating the fact that we even have that part of our founding document. And people are going to push back on it and say, well, maybe we shouldn't have this. Now, that's a whole different conversation, but it does put some very, very compromising things on that Second Amendment. Look, we got to take a quick pause, folks. When we come forward, we'll continue the conversation around this situation as President Biden has issued an executive order to curb gun violence. What's your take? Post your comments in the chat and stay with us. You're tuned into The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to PO Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape. With me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Jabra.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
There's a great piece in the Washington Post that came out about this, looking at his whole career. And when you do a look at his whole career and the number of things he said, from the time he said George Bush doesn't care nothing about black people, when he was doing that, and then all of the stuff that he said, one of my big pet peeves is not just the fact about you just saying things without truth, not knowing the full truth. My pet peeve is, are you doing all of this for yourself, or are you trying to do this for other people? And it's hard for me to identify, Jules, a moment when he says something to the effect of, hey, black designers don't have a say in this industry. Every time Kanye West talks, he's talking about what he himself personally have undergone, the trials of his personal life, the trials of his personal brand, the trials of him personally not getting into certain spaces and certain circles. I'm not hearing from Ye where he's saying, this is why black folks are always marginalized. This is why black folks are at the bottom. I'm not hearing that language. I'm hearing, why they ain't gonna let me in though?
Okay, so you said we were gonna have a quick conversation, and I tried to
quick.
Listen, I tried
to set the show down, but
I try to just ignore this dude. I try to act like he doesn't exist, but now you angered me real quick with the thought that I gotta say. So here's
we can't act like the man don't exist. He's a cultural figure.
He is not paying my mortgage, Farajii. I don't care about this man.
But look, all right, I get that. But no, let's keep it real. We pocket watching him. We money watch. We money clocking him. Everybody's talking about he ain't no billionaire no more. Oh yes, he is. He still got this. He still got that. The Adidas deal was only $250 million. That's 10% of what they would lose. If that's just 10%. Adidas could find somebody else, even though they earned them $2 to $3 billion. Adidas can, I think Adidas will be fine.
That's the point I'm making. So you're, as Ye, when we went to that infamous Sway interview years ago, and Sway was trying to tell him to do these things on your own. Stop trying to look for the buy-in to these big white corporations and then going on blast rants about how they did you wrong and how they're not looking out for you. And I feel like, no, like he told you the blueprint from jump. It's kind of sort of like you in high school trying to always go at the pretty girl, going at the high school cheerleader. She don't want you, but you're going to keep on going at her. You're going to keep on going at her. You're going to keep on going at her. And it's like, bro, like, she don't want you. You're forcing yourself into a situation. So then when you get into that situation, then you get taken advantage of. That's the point that I feel like we're not focusing on. I don't care about this man and what his other endeavors are, because to me, he's not for the culture. I've been saying that. He ain't doing that for us. I've been saying that for the culture. That's the only part I'm focusing on. What he's doing for himself, hey, more power to him. I hope he has future business endeavors. I don't care. That's him and his life. But what he's doing, the impact for the culture, he has in front.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on this. Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
A lot of people, it represents so much for America, but then to have this, and I don't want to say it's a bombshell, because I don't know if we are truly surprised that this institution was connected to the transatlantic slave trade the way it was.
Right.
And when we start to look at it, they put out this 134-page report detailing various elements, and I'm looking at the report right now, Doc. Okay. I mean, they broke it down into various sections or chapters, rather. They have an introduction, slavery in New England and at Harvard, financial ties, Harvard and the slave economy. They have chapter 4, intellectual leadership, Harvard, slavery and its legacies before and after the Civil War. Chapter 5 is the long legacies of slavery, segregation, marginalization, and resistance. And then they have chapter 6, which is conclusion. And then chapter 7 is recommendations to the president and fellows of Harvard College. And then there's 2 appendices attached to this report. First and foremost, when you heard this announcement from Harvard, what was going through your mind? Were you surprised, or were you like,
no, not
finally?
No, not in the least. Harvard had to get in the game. I mean, it had already been beaten to the punch by our sister Ruth Simmons, who, of course, convened the conversation at Brown University. Ruth Simmons was the first woman of African descent, first person of African descent to be the president of an Ivy League school when she took over Brown University some years ago. And she convened, as a former African American studies professor, Dr. Simmons, a committee to investigate the role of Brown in enslavement. And of course, she retired from Brown to great fanfare, and then decided to return to the South. She's from Louisiana, and she is just now retiring from being the president of Prairie View A&M. So Dr. Simmons kind of pointed the way to this. And as they mentioned in the report, in the recommendations phase, section 7, they note her. And they also note some other places. Princeton Theological Seminary, which is created a $27.6 million reparative endowment. Brown pledged $10 million. 10 was raised by private donors, and $8 million from the Brown Corporation. And we know that, I'll quote Scott Galloway, professor at NYU, who calls these Ivy League schools and others who are Ivy adjacents, the Stanfords, the Universities of Chicago, basically the NYUs, they're basically hedge funds who admit the children of the donors and a few other exceptional Negroes and others and burnish their brands. So Harvard was a little bit behind the curve. Georgetown had raised some money, and they're talking about descendants of those who were enslaved. They mentioned the University of Glasgow, in fact, in the Harvard report. So Harvard, of course, is Harvard, which means, oh, we can't let these other schools outdo us. So they are going to set aside $100 million in an endowed fund to basically engage in forms of, I don't know, they don't call it reparations. They wouldn't be that silly. That would get them on the hook. I'm sure their lawyers workshopped every line in what they wrote, but you know, in the case of Brown, they put together some money for K-12 students in Providence, Rhode Island. They engaged in loan forgiveness for students, fellowships in terms of slavery studies. In terms of Harvard, and I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, finally. Harvard created some recommendations that, if nothing else, will burnish the Harvard reputation. So no, I'm not surprised at all. And anybody who wants to read about the role of enslavement in the Ivy League, get Craig Stephen Wilder's book, Professor Wilder's book, Ebony and Ivy, where he basically traces the impact of enslavement and the creation of the Ivy League schools, all of them. So you can just get it in one book. So no, I wasn't surprised at Harvard at all.
Would you recommend that people take a look at this report, this 134-page report?
Absolutely. I think it's a masterpiece of forensic science. I mean, I love it. I mean, I was telling Joel and you before we came on. I mean, I've kind of been laughing. There have been a couple of moments I laughed out loud. Not at the tragedy of enslavement, of course, because we, of course, are victims of that, ongoing victims in the afterlife, but laughing at the kind of aggrandizement of Harvard's resources. Sven Burkett, who has written a number of studies talking about enslavement, he's got a book called Empire of Cotton. As it is noted, Burkett and his students, including undergraduate students, have been tracing some of this stuff for a very long time. And now, you know, in the wake of the reckoning of 2020, so-called, and of course, President Bacow in 2019 called this piece together, you know, Burkett plays a valuable role. And there's some top-notch scholars involved in the committee that was pulled together. Tamiko Brown-Nagin, who we've talked about before, you know, Professor Nagin at the dean of the Radcliffe Institute, professor of law at Harvard, who just wrote a great book on Constance Baker Motley, Evelyn Hammonds, Annette Gordon-Reed. I mean, there are a number of people, but again, reinforcing the Harvard brand. I started to say Howard, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Right.
Little Sisters of the Poor Benefits Association, that is recommendation number 3, I think it is. Building partnerships is what they call it. But we'll talk about that with HBCUs.
Right. So, folks, I would advise folks that are watching today, if you want to get a copy of the report, you can download it for free at legacyofslavery.harvard.edu /report. legacyofslavery.harvard.edu /report. And you can read the report for those who are interested, those who would like to see what Harvard has to say about their involvement with slavery. This is an opportunity for you to see it. Dr. Carr, when we look at this, $100 million, and my first thought was, well, where did they get this number from? First, even before the number, what was the impetus of even creating a committee? And I know you mentioned everybody else was kind of doing it, but do you feel like there was a singular incident that was like, you know what, we need to do this? Or is it just a number of things that happened over the past couple of years? And you know, whether it's George Floyd, the killing of George Floyd, whether it's you know, all of those things, what do you think really got Harvard saying, okay, enough is enough, we got to say something?
Well, Harvard is the brand, as we know. It's not the King's College in New York, which was later renamed Columbia University. It's not any of the others. It's not Yale. It's Harvard. Harvard is the American Oxford, the American Cambridge, the American University of Berlin. It is the brand by which all other universities are measured. So $100 million is a lot more than 27.6. $100 million is more than 10. In other words, the number, I'm not going to say it's arbitrary, but it's a nice round number that it adds a zero to anybody else. You know,
right.
You know, and
it's big. It sounds substantial and significant.
No question. And just like Mackenzie Scott, who was giving away millions in unrestricted funds in terms of philanthropic efforts to historically Black colleges, tribal colleges, and other institutions, the money on her Amazon stock has made that money back that she gave away and more since she's been giving it away. Harvard's not going to miss $100 million, and it's an endowment. It's not direct investment. It's not like they're saying, okay, we're going to give $10 million to 10 different HBCUs to do what you want. No, it's not. No, it's not that. It's not like they're saying we're going to endow several K-12 institutions and you can do what you want with the money. In other words, it's not a form of reparations. It's really the money's not really going anywhere in terms of, you know, Harvard is going to, and for some of that money, I'm sure, pay itself. And you know, they're offering, among other things, the possibility of exchange programs with Harvard faculty and HBCU faculty. Now, maybe they're going to pay the HBCU faculty salaries when they come work at Harvard. But of course, that would mean that the HBCUs would have to pay the Harvard salaries, which would actually hurt the HBCUs. Anyway, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But the point is that that $100 million is not being given away. To quote the line from the Jimmy Stewart film, It's a Wonderful Life, Potter's not selling, Potter's buying. But at any rate, so that they're burnishing their reputation. Now, is it better to have this money than not set aside? Of course, it's better to have this money set aside. But I'm not surprised at all. In fact, when the opening at the beginning of chapter 1, the first line in the report said Harvard's motto, Veritas, which means truth, of course, inscribed on gates, doorways, and sculptures all over campus, demands of us truth. What? And as you know, brothers, as it is said to have been said to Pontius Pilate, when Pontius Pilate said, "What is the truth?" and would not stay for an answer. So when you read the report, the truth of the matter is a great deal of it is big up in Harvard. It's big up. In fact, when I first saw the story break and downloaded the report, I went looking for the things about Harvard that I expected Harvard to lift up. Who are the exceptional Negroes that it is let in? So I went looking for the HBCU folk. The Du Bois is in there, of course. Eva Beatrice Dykes, a lot of people don't know her. She was at Oakwood College. She came out of DC, went to Dunbar High School, went to Howard, came to Harvard. They said, we don't count the Howard degree. You got to take a Harvard degree. They talk about that in there. Richard T. Greener, who was the dean of Howard's Law School, was a graduate of Harvard University. He's in there. But what I'm looking for, and then I started reading the footnotes. And as I read the footnotes, what I noticed, take Eva Dykes, for example. I'm looking at Eva Beatrice Dykes, who was the first woman of African descent to qualify for a PhD, complete the requirements for a PhD in history. One of 3 Black women who graduated PhDs the year she graduated. And I'm looking at the footnotes, and what I see accessed is the Radcliffe archives for the things they have in their archives of Eva Dykes. So that's cool. But what I didn't see were the books written by Black scholars, including a cat at Oakwood for years, talking about Eva Dykes. I'm like, how did Harvard evade the opportunity to quote Black scholars writing at Black institutions about somebody they're saying was a person who suffered racism at the place that, well, I tell you, chef's kiss. So yeah, you gotta read it, man. Forensic science. It's a beautiful elevation of the Harvard brand in a kind of moment of, I don't want to call it cosplay, but self-flagellation in pursuit, as they said, something that ends of them truth. Anyway, we'll see.
Folks, we are having a conversation around Harvard's claiming or saying that they're going to commit $100 million to create a legacy of slavery fund after they have come out with a 134-page report outlining their involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. This report of the Presidential Committee on Harvard and the Legacy of Slavery shows intimately, based upon their history, their research, and the work that was done by their committee, that Harvard gained and benefited from slavery. And so they are trying to come clean with this report and with other ideas and goals to address this issue. We've been talking to Dr. Greg Carr, who is a professor of Africana Studies at Howard University and is the host of the Black Star Network's The Black Table. Dr. Carr, I want to throw up here just something that they put out. This is what Harvard put out. Keenan, if we could post this quote on the screen, talking about what Harvard is planning to do, some of their key goals in this whole effort. They are planning to address slavery legacy. The report calls for spending the money in a multitude of tracks. One, by tracing the modern day descendants of enslaved people at Harvard. Two, by building memorials and curriculum to honor and expose the past. Number three, by creating exchange programs between students and faculty members at Harvard and those at historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and by collaborating with tribal colleges. And four, by forging partnerships to improve schools in the American South and the West Indies, where plantation owners and Boston Brahmins made their intertwined fortunes on the backs of the enslaved. Seems like these are very lofty goals here. And Dr. Carr, when you look at goals like this, I mean, I'm talking about the memorials, the curriculum, and they said that even that a lot of these goals are vague on purpose because they wanted to hear feedback from other folks within the Harvard community and outside of the Harvard community to add to it. But do you think this is a good start? These four goals, is this a good start for us?
It's a great start for Harvard. You know, I don't think anybody should be applauded for confessing to a crime.
Right. Now that's bad.
So, you know, I'm always wary when we celebrate having been abused, when an abuser says I did it. That doesn't really change the relationship. And in reading through the recommendations, I understand they were intentionally vague. The direct descendants, I love this one. Let me read it again. It says, we further recommend that in recognition of its lineage, the university engage with these descendants through dialogue, programming, information sharing, relationship building, and educational support. Through such efforts, these descendants can recover their histories, blah, blah, blah. The last one there, educational support. So you're giving scholarships? Now, in the case of Georgetown, which offered assistance to those who are direct descendants of those who were enslaved under Georgetown's auspices, including several Africans who were actually sold to keep the university's doors open. Those people still have to satisfy Georgetown's entrance requirements. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, and that's just in terms of the people who can trace. Now, mind you, there is a lawsuit. Tamara Lauren is having a lawsuit because one of her ancestors is in that photograph collection that is at Harvard that Harvard now claims that it owns. I mean, so, you know, they're in court about that. So you got a direct chance to do the right thing there. But let's move on quickly because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. The enduring partnerships thing was interesting. The visiting appointments between HBCU faculty and Harvard faculty, that's interesting. Okay, as I mentioned before, the other thing they said is maybe they're going to establish a Du Bois Scholar Exchange. So HBCU students, junior level and above, can come to Harvard, and Harvard students can go to HBCUs. Now, that kind of exchange program has existed for years among HBCUs and HWCUs. But here's what I found out at Howard after 22 years of teaching. There are several Ivy League schools who stopped doing it. Why? Because the Black students would spend a semester at Howard and say, yeah, we good. We're not going back. So they started transferring to the HBCU. Wow. So when I saw Harvard saying they want to establish this, my first question, and it's an open question, is, did you all have one before and then you stopped it? Because I know several schools in the Ivy League, which I won't name, and Ivy adjacents, who canceled doing it because the Black students were coming and staying. So again, there's nothing in this report that doesn't help Harvard. You know, in fact, I mentioned this finally, Appendix 2, the note on process. They talk about all the things all the people they consulted, the librarians and things like that. They said they consulted librarians at several schools, including Howard, that digitized information for them. Well, that led me to this other question in number 3, enduring partnerships. They want to digitize collections at HBCUs to help them, what they call it, safeguard these materials. Safeguard? Really? They did. There's a partnership between Princeton and Harvard right now that is digitizing the records of the Black Teachers Association, Pre-Integration Teachers Association. It's being headed by two fine Black scholars, one at Princeton, one at Harvard. Again, I won't name them. Y'all can look it up for yourself. My question is, how y'all gonna digitize institutional records of Black institutions that were preserved and fought during Jim Crow to end Jim Crow, and now the stuff end up at your house? Y'all ain't slick. It's gonna, and then now you'll invite 2 or 3 remarkable Negroes up there. Maybe you'll give them a Carnegie or they'll get a MacArthur Genius Grant. And what you now have said is, look at us. Look at how great we are. We're helping these. Meanwhile, the institutions themselves, maybe they'll get a couple of exchange students, a couple of exchange faculty to burnish the fact that they've worked among the Negroes. But look at how they watch it. When y'all read this, look at how they characterize HBCUs. Look on page 9 when you see HBCUs first mentioned, and they talk about them doing the best they could, but ultimately not having the resources to be. You know what? Just cut a check. Y'all love Du Bois so much.
Cut a check.
Write Fisk a $50 million check, no strings attached. That ain't no money. You'll make it back in 6 months on your endowment. Write him a $50 million check, but you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that at all.
So I mean, and so it like, you know, going piece by piece, looking at each one of these goals. I'm wondering, I mean, there were Black people in the room. There were Black people at the table.
Yeah.
So how was it that they were in the room at the table, but yet these goals, these recommendations still come across as being Harvard's recommendations, Harvard beneficial?
Because they're of Harvard. And this is not a criticism of any of them. Certainly not William Julius Wilson, certainly not Tia Miles or any of the other. And I mentioned those two in particular because Tia Miles is a younger scholar and William Julius Wilson is one of the most respected Black scholars in the country. This isn't the William Julius Wilson of 40 or even longer years ago, writing in the Negro Digest, Black World, debating about the future of HBCUs. This is the William Julius Wilson who was recruited by Henry Gates and others into Harvard when they were building that dream team, when Gates and Cornel West and William Julius Wilson and others were brought to Harvard. And then the other Ivy Leagues started doing the same thing. You know, I'm not critical of any of those Black scholars, any of those Black academics, because they are part of that system. And in those debates and rooms, you know, this is a very rich report. They're not ducking some of the difficult things that are raised. At the same time, they are part of that institution. In other words, reparations is about a lot more than burnishing the institutions that benefited from the enslavement of Black people. If you're talking about real reparations, you're talking about repair. So I don't have any problem with that. Now, if all those faculty decided that they were going to resign and come work at HBCUs, I'd be like, okay, that's interesting. Go on, because HBCUs aren't the answer either. Harvard is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What's the situation for poor Black people and brown people in Cambridge? Just like Yale is in New Haven. Anybody been to New Haven know that there's Yale and there's the hood. So I'm saying, you know, at least with Ruth Simmons and Brown, they're talking about the surrounding area there or around Brown. Now, so I don't think Harvard is excluding any of that. What I'm saying is, as you say, if this is the start and they kept it intentionally flexible, let's see what happens next. And, you know, we'll all wait and see.
So speaking of reparations, I mean, you talked about Professor Tamika Brown-Nagin.
Yes.
And she said in an interview last month, just before this came out, of course, that they were being intentional about making sure that this $100 million is not seen as reparations, because she said, quote, reparations means different things to different people. So fixating on that term, I think, can be counterproductive.
Absolutely.
So do you think that was the right decision for them to not frame this as part of a reparations conversation?
I know they be leaving themselves open to very real critique, because reparations means one thing. And Professor Brown-Nagin, a brilliant scholar, on the faculty at the law school, Tamika Brown-Nagin got a JD. She know damn well you better not call this reparations. So you can't. Of course, it's not reparations. You can't talk about reparations. Professor at Columbia, my friend Catherine Frankie, who wrote a book called Repair several years ago that I actually teach at Howard Law School. This is a white woman, radical scholar at the law school, to whom I've sent students. In fact, one of my best students, Brother Jalil Muhammad, he grew up in the Nation of Islam. Jalil is graduating from Columbia Law in a couple of weeks.
Wow, I know Brother Jalil.
You know Jalil. Jalil is my man.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Jalil is a brilliant scholar, and she's got him working on this reparations work. He's extending her work. What Catherine Frankie said is, my ancestors benefited from enslavement, even though I am not from people who were here. But I came here, and guess what I got coming here? Whiteness. She said, you know what? I think there should be perhaps a wealth transfer tax. And that money be put in a common fund. You can have community land trust. You can have education. You can have all. She writes about this in her book, Repair. Harvard not talking about that. And Professor Brown-Nagin knows good and well they're not talking about that. So of course now when she says we shouldn't get fixated on it, I suspect that part of the reason that you don't want to get fixated on it is because that will require more of that institution than you are willing to call it your own. And when you read this report and you look at the history of Ewart Grenier, for example, who founded the African American States program at Harvard, whose daughter Lonnie, of course, we know, the jurist, and who Bill Clinton sold out. When you look at all these things in that report, when you look at William Hastie, Charles Hamilton Houston, the people who Harvard produced, Eva Dykes, W.B. Du Bois, most of them, many of them in that group came out of HBCUs. Now, if there's going to be a wealth transfer to HBCUs to train more students, that would look more like reparations, because you benefited from HBCU faculty. In fact, they said in the report, these HBCU undergrads you sent to us burnished our reputation, even though from 1898 to 1940, there were about 60 Black people in the Harvard student body at Harvard College. So the Negroes you did send here were superstars. And the Negroes who are there now are superstars and want to continue to shine in a firmament that they would not want to diminish by continuing to hold it to account in a way that might cost them their jobs. So I don't have no critique of them. They want to stay working on John Harvard's. I started calling it John Harvard's plantation. Anyway, but I mean, I'm not gonna call it John Harvard's plantation. I'm not gonna call it. I'm not gonna, even though as they detail in the report, that literal seal of the law school for years, that sheaf of wheat in the middle was a gesture toward the enslaved plantations, out of which they got their donations and their profits and their investment returns on investments for loans. Oh, they detail it beautifully in the report. What you gonna do about it? We're gonna set up a fund and talk about it.
And see, Doc, Dr. Carr, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm still not hearing. Give me the substance. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we're getting the appetizer, but we're not at the main course right now. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, like when you're talking about reparations, I know part of the conversation has been on education in terms of, okay, the descendants of enslaved people should be going to certain Ivy League schools like Harvard, Yale, free of charge.
Or better yet, going to HBCUs and other schools with some of that Harvard money. That would be reparations.
Wow.
See, but how's it repaired when you basically, in fact, the last thing they write in the conclusion is much remains to be done as we seek to live up to our highest ideals. But by undertaking these endeavors in good faith and with a commitment to meaningful action, the university imbues Veritas with new meaning and renews its commitment to excellence. Wait a minute, is that the same commitment to excellence you had when them enslaved Africans was working on the?
Come on.
So what you talking about? No,
and and Dr. Carr, explain this to me, because you've been in academia for years. You understand the dynamics, you understand the power players, you understand how everything works out.
Sure. Some of it.
What you say some of it, but when we look at this situation, I mean, like, HBCUs are struggling. HBCUs in this country are struggling. They're still trying to make ends meet, right? Whether you're talking about Morgan, Howard, any HBCU, they're struggling. We're still petitioning. I'm gonna use that term lightly. The government for more assistance.
Yes.
But then you have institutions like Harvard, like Columbia, like Yale. Harvard has an endowment. Check this out, folks, of $53 billion.
Wait, what? Let me explain. 53 billion, baby.
$53 billion.
Wait a minute, how much is a billion? A billion is how many million? A billion is 1,000 million, right?
Right.
If you set aside 100 million, you set aside 1/10 of a billion, and you got 53. What, man? They're gonna make their money back by the time the show is over.
50, or by the time the show is over.
And they didn't even give it out. It's an endowment, meaning what? We are setting it aside and keeping control of it. Come on, y'all.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like there needs to be. I mean, the gap of inequality between HBCUs and the little money that HBCUs are getting versus these larger institutions. And I'm thinking to myself, it can't be that difficult to come up with a strategy or way to bring some real equity in it. And I always say this, Dr. Carr, and I've been saying this, please correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. King said, "Is always the right is never the wrong time to do the right thing."
No question.
And so it's like at this point,
that's right.
At this point, I'm convinced that you just don't have the will. You really just don't have the will to do the right thing.
Right.
So I mean, like I hear what Harvard is saying, and I think any institution, any business or corporation, I think they all gain. If you're talking about Ford Motor Company, you talk whatever industry, they have all benefited from the transatlantic slave trade. They have all benefited on the backs of our people. But at this point, the admission is that's nothing to me. No. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Substantially.
I don't have any real criticism of Harvard because I don't have any expectations of Harvard. See, this is the thing. I mean, the idea is that we have these expectations. And so when you talk about the endowment, Howard is the closest HBCU to $1 billion endowment. It's just south of $1 billion. It's now in the high 800s. There's no other HBCU that's close. Spelman, I think, is second. They may be over the $300 million mark. But there aren't 10 HBCUs among the 103 or 4 or 5. And shout out to Morris Brown for reacquiring accreditation in the AUC. There aren't even 10 that have $100 million or more. And Harvard's sitting on 53 plus and making money every day with investments that speak to their participation in predatory lending, capitalism, this kind of thing. And in the report, they talk about the challenges Black students and others have made to how they invest their money. But, again, I don't have any criticism. I'm glad that this report came out. I think it sets a model and a template for this, for how to understand how higher education works at that level.
Yeah.
But I do think, though, finally, Farajii, that our challenge, and you've covered this extensively, brother, in the culture over the time that you've been on the air, it involves the least of these: forgiving student debt, lowering tuition costs, addressing K-12. And what Harvard has said in this report is we want to help with all of those things by sourcing our Harvard scholars that have analyzed this material. And yeah, okay, so you're going to burnish yourself for writing new reports on K-12 education and interface with school districts. You're going to do that for free now, right? Okay, or better yet, you're going to go in these school districts with your brilliant analysis at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and you're going to help them acquire the similar type of brilliant analysis, and then you're going to get out of their way, right? You're going to show up without the Harvard brand, right? Hell no, you're not going to do that because you want credit for it. And as you said, I mean, one thing about virtue signaling is key. It's got to be Harvard that does this. So yeah, nah.
So I guess that leads us to the next question. I mean, since you don't have any expectations, should we even have a discussion about accountability, holding them accountable?
Yeah. I mean, that's recommendation number 7, ensure institutional accountability.
Dr. Carr, you a trip, brother.
No, they are, man. But this is what I love. They say they're going to set up an accountability institutional apparatus.
You can't do that.
Sure you can.
No, you can't, Dr. Carr. Look, it's like, hey, Doc. Hey, Doc. Hey, look, brother. It's like when the police department.
Exactly.
When the police department has, and we're gonna talk about this today on the show. The police department whipping our ass, right?
Farajii,
and then be like, we're gonna have our internal affairs investigate.
Yes, sir. You are a national treasure, brother. That's when you put it. You put it exact. That is the perfect analogy, brother.
Like, how you gonna investigate yourself,
brother? Well, or maybe you wait. And you wait 20 or 30 years, and you go get the people who wrote The Wire, and you make an HBO series on corrupt cops and play yourself again. Hey, wait a minute! They came back to your hometown to make another show about dirty cops and get some awards. I mean, we've seen this show before.
I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Yes, you do.
That is the craziest thing in the world. I don't get it. How do you investigate yourself? Right. And then you like, it's like the conversation I think we had on Brother Roland's show, just in terms of these companies that say they want to give some money for racial justice. And then, or they give themselves, they like pat themselves on the back.
No question.
And it's like, that is counterproductive. Yes. To what we're trying to do, to the progress we're talking about here. You can't investigate yourself. So, I mean, and I'm saying, is there, and please, pardon, let me know if I don't know, because I really don't know, Doc. Is there a way, or a commission, or a group, or institute, or think tank, somebody that can go to these institutions and say, okay, you are at a place that you want to redress this your grievance, or your ties to slavery. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going, as outside independent group of individual scholars and researchers and historians, we're going to hold you accountable. And if you don't live up to our standards of accountability, then you owe us.
Yeah.
Is there
absolutely. In the appendix 2, you'll see, for example, the consultancies they engaged in. They had all these dialogues. They brought people in to have conversations, and that's beautiful. One of the recommendations they want to do when they deal with Native Americans, they want to have a landmark conference with the Native American program at Harvard to advance national dialogue on the histories and legacies of indigenous slavery and colonialism, all this kind of thing. And I'm sure there will be publications, and there will be academic accolades and this kind of thing. But here, what you just said, and they say this at the end of their report, they say, the entanglements we've had with enslavement are in the past. They can't be undone, but the present and future are ours as a university community to shape. Now, of course, within that field, here's a solution based on what you just said, Brother Farajii. Let's say Harvard says, we're going to put 10, 20, $30 million into establishing an independent, almost like a community review board. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And we encourage, and next thing you know, because see, this other thing about Harvard did it. So guess what? Yale working on their report somewhere. Columbia, you got to get their report. Okay. Again, go get Craig Stephen Wilder's book. You probably already gonna pay him a consultancy or get him to come in and give a talk. But anyway, now you've established this separate institution and you leave it alone.
Yeah.
And you don't, this is the other thing you don't do. You don't populate it with your faculty members.
That's right.
It's not the usual suspects. And you don't build links with Social Science Research Council, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the Mellon Foundation. Right. You don't then try to figure out how you can get some subsidized grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. No. We gave this group the money. And the people who were picked to decide first how to do the money came from Black institutions, came from brown institutions, came from indigenous institutions, and they don't have any ties to any of these places that create what some people have called the professional managerial class. So you know what you're not going to be able to do? Engage in what Catherine Liu and others call virtue hoarding. Because see, the thing is, it's the usual suspects,
right?
And they have some exquisite Blacks who will excoriate you. They'll do the right poem, they'll have the beautiful art, and they get fellowships, and they come up. And then you set them up and you get out of their way. What comes out of that? I trust what comes out of that. But then they can't do that. Why? Because there's no value in that for us.
I'm about to say, Doc, there's no value in that. They can't gain and benefit. They can't control. Now, here's my final point, Doc, and I'm so grateful that you spent some time with us today. Yes, I mean, my point is that, like, at this point, the conversation about repairing the damage, we can put it as the term reparations, or we could just look at the term justice. At this point, how do we shift the conversation from just money talk to legacy building, to start to here's why I'm asking. I have an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Yes, sir.
By the time my son, God willing, gets to college in 10 years and then 16 years for my daughter, if I don't want to have a conversation and be like, hey, son, yeah, we got reparations back in 20-something, but we spent it. So, you know, we're going to have to figure out how to pay for your college.
How about that?
I don't, that doesn't, like, getting a check at this point doesn't seem like it will ease my soul.
Well, that's not going to happen. No.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to check. I need to have an investment in the futures of Black children and Black people. That's what I'm saying. When we talk about the stock and all of that, what is the futures of Black children and Black people in this country? Because that's the only investment. Like, I don't need a check. Like, I work and all of that. So I'm trying to figure out what is going to be the future of the children. So that way they don't have to carry this burden 15, 20 years from now. And my children come up and say, Dad, what you know, Dad, man, it's college is crazy, Dad. Like, it's very expensive. I thought y'all talked about that 10, 15 years ago. We did, son, but a lot of Black people just wanted to check.
How about that? Yeah, that's tough, Farajii. I think, and Frankie writes about this in her book, Repair. Wealth transfer, first of all, public dollars are our dollars. We pay taxes. And so policy making in terms of how to spend public dollars, if Harvard wants to make a dent, and I'm not saying they won't, again, I'm saying this is an opportunity. Use Harvard's clout, use the number of Harvard graduates who are in public policy making at the state, federal, and local levels to engage in resource investment in these communities that are suffering. Use your cultural capital, the one you burnish so much, to intervene there. Now, when you're talking about self-repair, of course, we can't look outside for that. And so we're having a conversation in the Black Star Network in part because, you know, Brother Roland and all of us, you know, are saying, let us support our own. This becomes a threat to the hierarchy because while we're having this conversation, I'm sure this Harvard report is going to be discussed on white-facing media, and they're going to have some experts in there, and they're going to blah, 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 and it's going to be a very different conversation. Why? Because it's burnishing those places. I'm not against the check. I think everybody should get a check, but I also think that can't be the objective, as you said. What we need to engage in terms of reparations transcends even the United States of America. If you're going to reimagine the country we live in and the world we live in, it's going to require a different look at the way we even think about each other. And I do not see that in the Harvard report, nor would I expect to see it in the Harvard report.
No.
Harvard's going to remain Harvard.
Right.
You see, and hey, be Harvard. But my question is, what's Tuskegee going to do? What's the legislature going to do in Louisiana for Southern and Grambling? What are we talking about with Alabama A&M and Alabama State? And more importantly, the K-12 schools. More importantly, everything from basic needs like food, shelter, housing, and that's policy making. You want to impress Harvard? Get some of them presidents and senators and some people to act right.
Right.
And we'll hand and on the ground and give us the resources. I think that's the kind of thing we have to do.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Doc, I'm like, I want it all. Yeah, I want the money. I want land. I want educational equity. I want it all. Because now it's becoming more and more insulting and a slap in the face of us. Like, you got all these institutions that recognize that they have gained and benefited from slavery. Therefore, they've gained and benefited from our ignorance up to this present day.
Yes.
You can say that. You can, oh, yes. No, I want it all.
Yes.
I want, and there should be no compromise because the United States government, these institutions, corporations, they have made us and conditioned us to believe that we were gaining something, and we're in some cases, some of the worst than we were 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Of course.
But so I want it all. I don't want no compromise. It's like, nah, bro, we can get a check.
Well, I mean,
let's get an acre of land for each family. You know what I'm saying? Let's make sure our children go to school for free. Like, I want it all.
Yes. Well, that's tough, Farajii, because I think what that requires then is a facing that we're not going to get that by behaving the way we've been behaving. The only way we made progress in any moment in world history is when the people who are being taken advantage of say, that's it, you're not taking advantage of me anymore. So when you say that, of course, I think about the fact that again, Martin Luther King is evoked. Went to school at Boston University, had to come out of Morehouse and Crozier Theological Seminary, right there in the area. And Dr. King, of course, when he's critiquing militarism and materialism, when he is critiquing this whole structure that the society is based on, what you're talking about can be done, but it can't be done as long as we're asking. We have to turn away. One of the reasons Harvard almost has to write a report like this, and the other schools have to do it, is because people are increasingly turning away from those institutions.
Yeah,
as well they should.
Yeah.
So like, wait. Look. We understand. People like, I'm not, but damn about Harvard. You know, ask yourself this: why was Nas a fellow at Harvard? Why did he receive the Du Bois medal? Why is there a hip hop archive at Harvard? Why? Because those young people from the Caribbean and from Black and brown communities in New York and everywhere else stood on their own ground, made their own culture without asking permission for anybody. It became so important that these places that want to be prestigious had to associate themselves with it. That's how you get reparations. You build your own. What Elijah Muhammad say? Accept your own and be yourself.
Your own, be yourself.
Watch how quick we get reparations when we decide we're gonna reserve our labor. We're not running up and down the football field for University of Alabama anymore. We're gonna go play at Tuskegee. Oh, we've got to investigate the event. Yeah. Go ahead. It ain't gonna be enough yet. You
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?